right, it looks like it's about time to get started. So since speaker number one is cross-entered and went to the other round, I believe we should start with speaker number two, Izzy Tran. And Izzy, would you like any time signals? And of course, you're allowed to time yourself if that's preferred.
Would it be possible for you to just give me the 1 minute signal when I'm done, like 1 minute left?
Yes, I can give you 1 minute. Would you like a grace or no? Just 1 minute?
Just 1 minute.
Okay, that's fine. Are all the other judges ready?
Just for clarification beforehand, but can everyone see and hear me all right? Okay then, so I'll begin on my first word. When I was 9 years old, I went off to summer camp for the first time, and my mother packed me a suitcase full of books. In my family, reading was a primary group activity. And I had this idea that camp was going to be just like this. And on the very first day, our counselor taught us a cheer, and it went like this. R-O-W-D-I-E, that's the way we spell rowdy. Rowdy, let's get rowdy. Rowdy. Yeah. So I couldn't figure out for the life of myself why we were supposed to be so rowdy, or why we had to spell this word incorrectly. R-O-W-D-I-E? But I recited a cheer. I did my best. And I just waited for when I could go off and read my book. But the first time that I took my book out of my suitcase, the coolest girl in the bunk came up to me, and she asked me, "Why are you being so mellow?" Now I tell you this story about summer camp. I could have told you 50 others just like it. All the times that I got the message that somehow I should be trying to pass as more of an extrovert. Despite how difficult the pandemic has been, virtual classrooms have been introvert heaven. For me, as an introvert, surprise, being alone just makes learning less distracting. But the idea that being an introvert is not only okay, but optimal at times, isn't supported by society at large. According to an industrial psychiatry survey, despite introverts showing strong leadership qualities, they make up less than 18% of supervisors and only 2% of senior executives. So extroverts must learn how to recognize the qualities that make introverts strong. We're self-sufficient, think ahead, and we're mature. And we introverts must learn how to take pride in who we are as our own entity, and not just in contrast extroverts, because introverts are not merely the opposite of extroverts. We are our own proud, powerful people. The Power of Introverts, a February 2012 TED Talk by Susan Cain. To see the bias clearly, you need to understand what introversion is. Introversion is how you respond to stimulation. So extroverts really crave large amounts of stimulation, whereas introverts feel at their most alive when they're in quiet. Been introverts. I'll give you some examples. Eleanor Roosevelt, Rosa Parks, Gandhi. All these people describe themselves as quiet and soft-spoken and even shy, and they all took the spotlight. And this turns out to have a special power all its own, because people could feel that these leaders were at the helm, not because they enjoyed it, but because they had no choice, because they were driven to do what they thought was right. So, if all this is true, then why are we getting it so wrong? And why are we making these introverts feel so guilty about wanting to just go off by themselves? One answer lies deep in our cultural history. Western societies, and in particular the US, have always favored the man of action over the man of contemplation. In America's early days, we lived in what historians call the culture of character, where we still, at that point, valued people for their inner selves and their moral rectitude. But then we hit the 20th century and we enter a new culture that historians call the culture of personality. What happened is we had evolved an agricultural economy to a world of big business. And so suddenly, people are moving from small towns to the cities. And instead of working alongside people they've known all their lives, now they are having to prove themselves in a crowd of strangers. So quite understandably, qualities like magnetism and charisma suddenly come to seem really important. Now, none of this is to say that social skills are unimportant. And I'm also not calling for the abolishing of teamwork at all. But I am saying that the more freedom that we give introverts to be themselves, the more likely that they are to come up with their own unique solutions to these problems. My grandfather was a rabbi, and he was a widower who lived alone in a small apartment in Brooklyn that was my favorite place in the whole world growing up, partly because it was filled with his very gentle, very courtly presence, and partly because it was filled with books. Just like the rest of my family, my grandfather's favorite thing to do was to read. But he also loved his congregation, and you could feel this love in the sermons that he gave every week for the 62 years that he was a rabbi. He would take the fruits of each week's readings, and he would weave these intricate tapestries of ancient and humanist thought. And people would come from all over just to hear him speak. Here's the thing about my grandfather, though. Underneath this ceremonial role, he was really modest and really introverted. And away from the podium, when you called him to say hello, he would often end the conversation prematurely for fear that he was taking up too much of your time. But when he died, at the age of 94, the police had to close down the streets of his neighborhood to accommodate the crowd of people who came out to mourn him. And so these days, I try to follow my grandfather's example in my own way. So I just published a book about introversion, and it took me about 7 years to write. And for me, those 7 years were like total bliss because I was reading, I was writing, I was thinking, I was researching. But now, all of a sudden, my job is very different. And my job is to be out here talking about introversion. And so I prepared for moments like these as best I could. I spent the last year practicing public speaking every chance I could get. And I call this my year of speaking dangerously. And that actually helps a lot. But I'll tell you, what helps even more is my sense, my belief, my hope that when it comes to our attitudes to introversion and a quiet and a solitude, we truly are poised on the brink of dramatic change. I mean, we are. And so I'm going to leave you now with 2 calls for action for those who share this vision. Number 1, stop the madness you're constantly do work. Just stop it. We need much more privacy and much more freedom at work. School, same thing. We need to be teaching kids to work together, for sure. But we also need to be teaching them how to work on their own. This is especially important for extroverted children too, because that is where deep thought comes from. Number 2, take a good look at what's inside your own suitcase and why you put it there. So extroverts, maybe your suitcases are also full of books, or maybe they're full of champagne glasses or skydiving equipment. Whatever it is, I hope you take these things out every chance you get and grace us with your energy and your joy. But introverts, you being you probably have the impulse to guard very carefully what's inside your own suitcase. And that's okay. But occasionally, just occasionally, I hope you will open up your suitcases for other people to see, because the world needs you, and it needs the things you carry. So I wish you the best of all possible journeys and the courage to speak softly. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time was 9:31.
I'm double entered, so would it be fine if I go to my other event now?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you, and good luck to all the other competitors.
All right, are we ready for the next speaker?
I'm ready, yeah.
Cool. So we're going to speaker number 3, Manana Srikantam, I believe.
Can you guys see and hear me okay?
Yes. Would you like any time signals?
Yeah, could I have the 1 minute left remaining, the 30 seconds of grace period included?
30 seconds. So like at 9:30, you want one?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Yeah, makes sense.
When Steve was 8, I was 6. My brother Gary was 5, and my brother Bruce was 4. Our father was a hot-headed man, someone who didn't take kindly to being disturbed on a Saturday morning. And he'd react to being disturbed on Saturday mornings by stalking into the playroom and administering a very freewheeling form of corporal punishment, lashing out at whoever was within arm's reach. We were by no means battered children, but we did get hit. And we found it terrifying. So we devised a sort of scatter and hide drill. As soon as we heard the footsteps coming, Steve would wriggle under the couch. I would hide in the closet in the playroom, and Gary would hide in the window seat toy chest, but not before we closed Bruce up inside the fuse box. I dare say my father was never fooled by these fruits. It was only in recent years that began to think perhaps it wasn't such a good idea to close a 4-year-old up against a panel of old-style, high-voltage fuses. But my brothers and I, even through those unhappy times, came through them with something that was clear and hard and fine, a primal appreciation for the bond that we shared. We were a unit, a loud, loving, lasting unit. And we knew that we would always be able to call on the strength from each other the rest of our lives. My brother and I are 6.5 years apart. It's an unfortunate number, too large to bridge the gaps in maturity, interest, and vocabulary, but too small for me to be the fun older sister that gets him everything he wants. And yet, still, my brother is the person I love most in this world. And I find that I am the very best version of myself when I love him with all the sisterly love that I am capable of. The bond I have with my brother, as well as the bond as many other siblings across the globe. So Jeffrey Kluger explores in his speech aptly named The Sibling Bond, given November 2011 at TEDx Asheville. Up until around 15 years ago, scientists didn't really pay much attention to sibling bonds, and there's a good reason why. You have just one mother, one father, and if you do marriage right, one spouse for life. Siblings can claim none of that uniqueness. They're interchangeable, fungible, a kind of household commodity. Parents set up shop and begin stocking their shelves with inventory, the only limitations being sperm, egg, and economics. As long as you keep breathing, you may as well keep stocking. And so, after we're born, we do whatever we can to attract the attention of our parents, figuring out what our strongest selling points are and marketing them ferociously. Someone's the funny one, someone's the pretty one, someone's the athlete, someone's the smart one. Scientists call this de-identification. My older brother was a high school football player, which if you saw my older brother, you know he wasn't. I could become a high school football player too and get at most 50% of the applause in that area. Or I could become student council president or specialize in the arts and get 100% of the applause in that area. But there's more to it. Parents exacerbate this problem further when they exhibit favoritism, which they do overwhelmingly, no matter how much they won't admit it. A study from Time magazine found that 70% of fathers and 65% of mothers exhibit favoritism for at least one child. But there are other forces at play too. The same study found that improbably the most common favorite for a father was the last-born daughter. For mother, it's the firstborn son. Not just that fathers are habitually wrapped around the fingers of the little girls, rather there's a certain reproductive narcissism at work. Your opposite gender kids can never resemble you exactly, but they can resemble you temperamentally. You'll love them all the more for it. As a result, the father who's a businessman will just melt at the idea of his MBA daughter with the tough as nails worldview. A mother who's a sensitive type will go gooey over her son, the poet. Birth order plays out in many other different ways as well. Firstborns across history have tended to be bigger and healthier, in part because of the advantage they get in food in an area in which it could be scarce. The IQ question is a very real thing. Firstborns have a 3-point IQ advantage over secondborns, partly because of the exclusive attention they get from mom and dad, and partly because of the chance they get to mentor the younger kids. All in all, this means that firstborns are much more likely to be CEOs, astronauts, senators, and earn more than the other kids. Lastborns come into the world with a whole different set of challenges. The smallest and weakest cubs of the den, they're at the greatest risk of getting eaten alive. So they have developed what are called low power skills. The ability to charm and disarm, to intuit what's going on in someone's head, to duck the punch before it lands. Most middleborns don't get quite as serious a deal. I like to think of us as the flyover states. We're the ones who are fighting hardest for recognition in the home. The ones who are always raising our hand, but never getting called on. And that can lead to self-esteem issues. But on the upside, middleborns develop denser and richer relationships outside of the home. The feuds that play out in the playroom of birth order, favoritism, and so many other issues are unrelenting. One study found that children in the 2 to 4 age group engage in one fight every 6.3 minutes, or 9.5 fights an hour. That's not fighting. That's performance art. One reason for this is that there's a lot more people in your house than you think, or at least a lot more relationships. Every person in your house has a discrete one-on-one relationship with every other person. These are called pairings or dyads. In a 4-person family with 2 parents and 2 kids, there are 6 dyads. Mom has a relationship with child A and B. Dad has a relationship with child A and B. There's a marital relationship, and then the relationship between the siblings themselves. In a 10-person family, in a 5-person family, there are 10 dyads. In the original Kennedy family with 9 children, there are 55 dyads. And Bobby Kennedy, with a whopping 11 children, had 91 dyads in his family. His overpopulation of relationships make fights unavoidable. All in all these dramas play out day to day, moment to moment, and serve as a real-time, total immersion experience for life. Siblings teach us when to stand up, but also when to stand down. We learn love, loyalty, honesty, sharing, caring, compromise, disclosure of secrets, and perhaps much more important, the keeping of confidence. I listen to my young daughters talking late into the night, the same way my parents no doubt listen to my brothers and me, and sometimes intervene, but usually I don't. They're part of a conversation that I am not part of, that no one else in the world is part of. It's a conversation that can and should go on for the rest of their lives. There may be no relationship that affects us more profoundly, that's closer, harder, sweeter, more filled with joy, or fraught with woe, than the relationships we have with our brothers and sisters. There's power in the sibling bond. There's pageantry. There's petulance too. But above all, the sibling bond is a thing of abiding love. Our parents leave us too early. Our spouse and our children come along too late. Siblings are the only ones who are with us for the entire ride. Over the arc of decades, there may be nothing that forms us more powerfully than our bond with our brothers and sisters. It's true for me, it's true for your children, and if you have siblings, it's true for you too. So today, when you leave here, I'm going to ask that you engage or re-engage some of the most important people of your lives, your brothers and your sisters. Brothers and sisters aren't the sine qua non of a happy life. Plenty of adult relationships are fatally broken and need to be abandoned for the sanity of everyone involved. And only children throughout history have shown themselves to be brilliantly, capable of getting their comradeship skills and socialization skills from friends, classmates, and cousins. But having siblings and not making the most of those bonds is, I believe, folly of the first order. If relationships are broken and fixable, fix them. They work, make them even better. Failing to do so is like having 1,000 acres of fertile farmland and never planting. Yes, you can always get your food from the supermarket, but think about what you're allowing to lie fallow. Life is short, it's finite, and it plays for keeps. Siblings may be them from the richest harvest we have at our time here.
Thank you. Your time was 9:16. With that, we will go to our next speaker, speaker number 4, Grace.
Hello, just to make sure that you can all see and hear me clearly.
Yep. And would you like any time signals?
No, I can time myself.
Great.
The time will start on my first word. I want to talk to you about something very small. So small, it's a single word. The word is misfit. It's one of my favorite words because it's so literal. I mean, it's a person who sort of missed fitting in. I'm a card-carrying misfit, and I'm here for the other misfits in the room because I'm never the only one. Somewhere in my early 30s, the dream of becoming a writer came right to my doorstep. Well, actually, it came to my mailbox in the form of a letter that said I'd won a giant literary prize for a short story I'd written. The prize was a trip to New York City to meet big-time editors, agents, and other authors. You know what I did the day the dream letter came to my mailbox? Well, I put the letter on my kitchen table, and I sat there in my underwear for an entire day, just staring at the letter. I was thinking about all the ways it had already screwed my life up. Who was I to go to New York City and pretend to be a writer? According to the US News and World Report in 2018, about 60% feel left out or isolated from others. And a study from McLean Hospital in 2021 furthered. This lack of belonging leads to both emotional and physical impacts. I've seen this firsthand. Friends I knew since kindergarten are changing themselves to fit into this painful mold. So this needs to stop, so that I can have my true friends back. We need to learn that what makes us special makes us strong. And embrace the beauty of being a misfit. A TED Talk by Lydia Yukonovich. Who was I? I tell you, I was a misfit. I already had 2 epically failed marriages underneath my belt. I'd flunked out of college, not once, but twice. And I had 2 lovely staycations in jail. I had also spent a long time homeless. You know, homeless people are some of our most heroic misfits because they started as us. So, as you can see, I missed fitting in just to about every category out there. Wife, scholar, daughter. And the dream of becoming a writer was kind of like a small, sad stone in my throat. For the trip, you got to choose 3 famous writers you wanted to meet. And these guys went and found them for you. You got set up at the Gramercy Park Hotel and you got to pretend you're cool. And smart and swang too. You got to eat at very, very fancy lunches and dinners. And I'm making a confession. I stole 3 linen napkins from 3 different restaurants. And I shoved a menu down my pants. I just wanted some keepsakes that when I got home, I could actually believe it happened to me. But the 3 writers I wanted to meet were Carol Maso, Lynn Tillman, and Peggy Keller. These were not famous, best-selling authors. But to me, they were women writer titans. They weren't mainstream writers either, but they were cutting a path through the mainstream with their body stories. I like to think kind of the way water cut the Grand Canyon. It nearly killed me with joy to hang out with these 3 women writers. I had never been in a room like that. You see, my mother never went to college, and my creative career was sort of like a small, sad stillborn thing. So they took me to the offices of W.W. Norton, where I was pretty sure I'd be escorted from the building just for wearing Doc Martens. When their lead editor, Carol House Smith, leaned over right in my face and said, "Well, send me something immediately then." So on the last night, I gave a big reading at the National Poetry Club. And at the end of the reading, Catherine Kittle of Kittle Hoyt Picard Litter Agency walked straight up to me, shook my hand, and offering me representation, like on the spot. I stood there, I kind of went deaf. But all that came out of my mouth was, I don't know. I'll have to think about it. All those open hands out to me. That smells sad, sounding right through. You see, I'm trying to tell you something about people like me. Misfit people. We don't always know how to hope, or say yes, or choose the big thing, even when it's right in front of us. It's a shame we carry. It's the shame of wanting something good. It's the shame of feeling something good. It's the shame of not really believing we deserve to be in the same room with people we admire. If I could, I'd go back and I'd coach myself. I'd be exactly like those women who helped me. I'd teach myself how to want things, how to stand up, how to ask for them. I'd say, you. Yeah, you. You belong in the room, too. Instead, I flew out to work. Such the evergreens and rain come back to view. What I'm saying is I flew back to Oregon, got a book deal, got an agent. But with only a head full and heart full of memories of having sat so near the beautiful writers. This memory was the only prize I allowed myself. But yet, at home in the dark, back in my underwear, I could still hear their voices. They said, don't listen to anyone who tells you to shut up or change your story. They said, give voice to a story only you know how to tell. They said, sometimes telling the story is the thing that saves your life. And now I am. As you can see, I'm a writer, and I became a teacher. Although it didn't happen the day the dream letter came to my mailbox, I learned something more. And, you know, there's a myth in most cultures about following your dreams. It's called the hero's journey. But I prefer a different myth. That's slightly to the side of that, or underneath it. It's called the misfits myth, and it goes like this. Even at your moment of failure, right then, you are beautiful. You don't know it yet, But you have the ability to reinvent yourself endlessly. That's your beauty. You can be an ex-con, you can be a homeless person, you can lose all your money or your job or your husband or your wife. You can even lose your marbles. You can be standing dead center in the middle of your failure and still, I am only here to tell you, you are so beautiful. Your story deserves to be heard. Because you rare and phenomenal misfit new species, you are the only one in the room who could tell your story the way that only you would. And I'd be listening. Thank you.
Thank you, your time is 9:17. Right. Next, speaker number 5, Mira Calarea. And Mira, would you like any time signals?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, cool.
Okay. If everyone's ready, my time will start now. Imagine in the scorching Rajasthan heat on a hot summer afternoon, a 2.5-year-old riding behind her mom, not knowing where they were headed. And 20 minutes later, that 2.5-year-old finds herself completely submerged in water. Before I knew it, I would be kicking, splashing, screaming, gulping down water, and holding on to my mom for my dear life. That's how I learned to swim. I started pool swimming when I was 2.5 and open water swimming when I was 14. And so I've given over 25 years of my life to this sport, during which I've swum in all 5 oceans of the world, crossed the English Channel, and set a world record in the freezing Antarctic Ocean. When you spend so much time with a sport, it ceases to be just that and becomes a mirror. And that shows you who you really are. You see that your mettle as an athlete is not only tested on race day, but every single day. When the sport demands that you get up at 4:30 in the morning, swim for 2 hours, go to school, come back, swim for 3 hours, go home, eat, and sleep. When you win a medal or set a world record, this mirror shows the happiness that you and your loved ones feel. But it also reflects the tears that you shed all by yourself, alone in the water. According to the Harvard Graduate School of Education, resilience is important because it gives people the strength they need to overcome hardship. Regardless of what activity you do, bravery is the key to success. Bhakti Sharma, an open water swimmer, gave a TED Talk in 2018, revealing how swimming gave her courage. She reminds us to stay strong in our weakest moments, and her strength has helped me, whether I'm swimming, doing homework, or simply just waking up in the morning. What Open Water Swimming Taught Me About Resilience by Bhakti Sharma. Open water swimming is an extremely lonely sport. I've spent hours looking into the infinite, seemingly bottomless ocean underneath me with nothing to keep me company but my own thoughts. And so not only have I been tested as an athlete, but also as a thinking, feeling, and imaginative human being.
Be it my first test as a marathon swimmer when I decided to swim for 12 hours nonstop in a pool, or crossing the English Channel in 13 hours and 55 minutes. When you're swimming, you don't talk, you don't hear very well, and your vision is restricted to what's right in front of you or underneath you. This isolation has been my sport's biggest gift to me. Through open water swimming, I've come to know myself in ways I could have never expected to. I remember at the age of 14 when I jumped into the ocean for the first time and the waves were constantly picking me up and throwing me back down again. I saw the child in me who enjoys adventures. While crossing the English Channel for the first time, when I got stuck in the same spot for an hour and a half because of the current, I saw the strong and dedicated athlete in me who didn't want to disappoint her parents or her country. While crossing the English Channel again, this time in a relay with my mother, not knowing that we were creating history, I saw the protective daughter in me who just wanted to see her own mother fulfill her dreams. And 5 years ago, when I jumped into the freezing Antarctic Ocean, wearing nothing but a swimsuit, goggle, and cap, with an unwavering spirit of just doing, I saw the fighter in me. When I jumped into that 0 to 1 degree Celsius water, I realized that I had prepared both my mind and my body for the cold. But what I wasn't prepared for was the density of the water. Each stroke felt like pulling through oil, and within the first 5 minutes, I had that paralyzing thought of just giving up. How nice it would be to get on the boat, stand underneath the warm shower, and wrap myself up with a warm blanket. But with that one thought, also came the more stronger, more willful voice from deep within me that said, you know you have it in you to just take one more stroke. And after the fourth one, I saw a penguin swimming underneath me, and it came up to my left and started swimming with me. See, a penguin is cheering you on, said that voice within. That voice, which has accompanied me through all my difficult scenarios, would have never shown itself if I had not spent so much time alone, had not paid attention to every voice that crossed my mind. When you find yourself alone in the ocean, the dangers that you face are not just external, like whales, sharks, jellyfish, or even demotivating people. But the more dangerous demons are the fear and the negativity that you face inside you that tell you you're not good enough, you'll never reach the other shore. What if you fail? What will people think? But like I said, alone in the ocean, there's nowhere to hide. I have to face my internal demons just as much as I have to taste the salt in the sea and acknowledge the whales, sharks, and jellyfish swimming beside me. I hate it and I love it. I hate it because this sport shows me the side of myself that I don't want to believe exists. The side of me that's human and not perfect, like the part of me that can't get up in the morning and make it to practice. The side of me that gets so burnt out and so tired, just wants to quit swimming. But I also love it because this sport has given me moments that I can look back on when I feel unmotivated. And they bring me to my knees because I feel so grateful. Many of you probably don't spend hours swimming nonstop, but who do you spend the most amount of your time with? You may share your external space with many others, but there's one constant companion all of you have. You. And yet, most of us may never come to knowing who we really are. If you're not invested in yourself, if you're not setting a path that brings you closer to you, no amount of success in life can bring you joy or satisfaction. Whether I'm swimming or doing the daily chores, all I ask myself is this the best I can do right now? And the meaning of best changes. On some days, it's swimming in the freezing Antarctic Ocean and setting a world record. But on most other days, it's getting over my depressing thoughts, getting out of the house, and doing the daily chores. What doesn't change is that voice within, that voice that guides me to be a better self every single day. And I believe that a truly successful life is one which is spent in the pursuit of becoming the best possible version of yourself, even when you take that last breath. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time was 8:52. All right. I guess we'll move on to speaker number 6, Luna.
Hello, just making sure if you can see and hear me all right. Perfect.
Yes. Do you want any time signals before we start, or do you just want to time yourself?
I can time myself.
Sounds great.
Should I begin on my first word or wait for a minute?
I think we are all ready. So go ahead.
Perfect. Why is Apple so innovative? They're just a computer company. They're just like everyone else. They have access to the same media, the same agencies, the same consultants. So then why is it that they have something different? Why is it that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. led the civil rights movement? He wasn't the only great orator of the day, and he certainly wasn't the only person who suffered in pre-civil rights America. So why him? And why is it that the Wright brothers were able to figure out controlled powered man flight when there were certainly other teams who were grossly better qualified and way better funded? There's something else at play here. I made a discovery, and as it turns out, all these great, inspiring leaders, companies, and organizations of the world, whether it be Apple or Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. or the Wright brothers, all think, act, and communicate the exact same way. In a recent survey from the Pew Research Center, 42% of adults under the age of 50 said it's been somewhat or very difficult for them to feel motivated since the onset of the coronavirus pandemic. Although I am clearly not an adult, I've experienced this firsthand, and audience, maybe you have too. These have been weird and frankly uncertain times, whether we're going to school or to work or just trying to make it through the day. That's why it's important that we learn how these great leaders, companies, and organizations of the world are able to inspire and motivate action to do the work that matters. Or if we can't find them, we learn how to become them. How great leaders inspire action. A TED Talk by Simon Sinek. Why, how, and what? This little idea explains how some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire when others aren't. You see, every single organization in the world, scratch that, every single person in the world knows what they do. But often, very, very few know why. What's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why are you doing what you do? And at the end of the day, why should anyone care? As a result, the way we think, the way we act, and the way we communicate is from the outside in. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest, from what someone does to how they do what they do, but we remove that why factor. But all these other leaders, companies, and organizations of the world think another way around. I know that was a mouthful, but let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everyone gets it. Now, if Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message Twitter. You see, that's how most marketing messages are done. That's how we don't communicate interpersonally. Now, they say what they do, they say how they're better than everyone else, and expect some sort of result. A vote, a purchase, a follow, something like that. Here's our brand new car. It has great gas mileage and leather seats. Buy our car. It's kind of basic. Now, here's how Apple, as well as many others, communicate to us more interpersonally. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently, and the way we do that is by making our products beautifully designed and simple to use. We just happen to make great computers. Do you want to buy one? Different, right? Just by reversing the order of information being said and incorporating the why Apple was doing what they did, inspired and motivated you more as an audience to follow up with whatever Apple tells you to do. But what it proves to us is that people don't often vote, purchase, or follow for what someone does, but rather why they do it. And here's the best part. None of what I'm telling you is my opinion. It's all grounded in the tenets of biology. No, not psychology, biology. If you look at the cross-section of the human brain, it is broken down into three major portions. Our neocortex corresponds with the what love, responsible for all of our analytical thought process. When people tell you facts and figures, plans, laws, bills, the more structured side of our brain. But the other two are responsible for human behavior, human feeling, and drive passions. That's what motivates us to do the work. You know, most people don't know about Samuel Pie Point Langdon. Back in the 20th century, it was the .com of the day to figure out a flying machine, and Samuel, for what we know, had the recipe for success. 1. He was gifted $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. 2. He held a seat at Harvard, worked with the best minds, and bought the best minds money could find him. The New York Times had followed him everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. Then how come we've never heard of him? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur had none of what we believe to be the recipe for success. 1, they barely had any money. They funded for the whole project with the proceeds of their bicycle shop. 2, no one on the team, not even Orville or Wilbur, had a basic level college education. The New York Times followed them nowhere, and no one really knew about them. So what's the difference between the two? Yet again, Orville and Wilbur were driven by a real cause. They were driven by that why. They believed if they figured out this flying machine that it would change the course of the world. Samuel was extremely different. He was in pursuit of a more personal result, to be rich, to be famous, and well, that's not necessarily a bad thing. We can see what happened. Orville and Wilbur were able to take off, and the funniest part about it, the day they did that, Samuel quit. He could have been like, that is an amazing discovery, and I will improve upon your technology, but he didn't. He wasn't first, he didn't get rich, he didn't get famous, he wasn't driven by a why. So he quit. Now, let me give you one more famous example to show how much the why matters to bring others to your cause. And we could look at Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. 250,000 people showed up at the right day, at the right time, just to hear a man they've never met speak. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was able to do all of that. But how? He wasn't a famous figure beforehand. He wasn't the only person suffering. But the thing is, he had a gift. He didn't go around telling people what needed to be changed about America in a specific plan, bill, or law. He went around and told people what he believed about it. I believe, I believe, I believe. And the people who believed what he did took on his cause and made structures to spread the word out. Lo and behold, 250,000 people showed up at the right day, at the right time, waited 8 hours under the Washington, D.C. August summer heat just to hear him speak. Now, even with that being said, how many of them showed up for him and him alone? 0. They showed up for themselves. They showed up because that is what they believed about America. Listen to them, politicians now with their 12-point comprehensive plans. They're not going to inspire anybody. You see, there are 2 types of leaders in this world, and while they sound similar, they can be from furthest apart. There are leaders that come from a position of power and authority, but those who lead are able to inspire and motivate us to do the work. And it is people who begin asking themselves, why? Why? Why do I do what I do? Why do I wake up every day? Why do I get out of bed? Why do I go to work? That are not only able to inspire, but find those who do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. I time for 9:18. Does not look like speaker number 1 is back from their second round yet, so we'll just have to wait here for a little bit. I guess the competitors may leave, but the judges should stay.
Yeah, I think everybody who's already gone can check out of the room, and we'll wait for Hannah, is it?
Yes, Hannah. She went to our
All right, it looks like Hannah just joined. So, Hannah, if you're ready, we can start.
Okay. Also, sorry about being late. I was at lunch.
That's perfectly fine. Would you like any time signals?
I think I'm good.
All right, cool.
Okay. So, are all the judges ready? Okay. The day I got laid off from my job at Martha Stewart, I was relieved. I loved the job. I really did. But the relationship was over and I didn't know how to end it. Then it broke up with me. And at the time, I had also been hosting a radio show for the Martha Stewart brand on Sirius XM. And then not long after, that got canceled too. And on the day of my last show, I got into the elevator on the 36th floor. And as it started to drop, I began to cry. Every floor took me further and further from what I had been. The magazine editor, a radio host, the person with the cool job to talk about at parties. And honestly, I had no idea what I was going to do. And quite frankly, no one was looking for me. Whenever I'm asked by my parents, friends, family, or just about anyone about what my passion and dream is, I usually start sweating and think of all the different options that might satisfy them. But I know that no matter which one I say, I really have no passion for them whatsoever. And this is the case for many people. So, as Terry Trespasio showed the world in her September 14th, 2015 TEDx talk, you don't have to know your passion to be successful. I present to you Stop Searching for Your Passion by Terry Trespasio. This idea that I had to know what I was supposed to do now is to pursue this passion. It just bugged me. It always had. And that's because there's a dangerously limiting idea at the heart of everything we believe about success and life in general. And it's that you have this one singular passion and your job is to find it and pursue it to the exclusion of all else. And if you do that, everything will fall into place for you. And if you don't, you failed. The pressure starts really young and builds your whole life, but it's perhaps most pronounced when you graduate from school, right? Like, the world is at your feet. What are you going to do now? And it's so intimidating picking a major for life. I mean, I had a hard time picking a major for, 4 years? And I changed that once, if not twice. And this compelling, this really forceful cultural imperative to choose your passion is extremely stressful. So I'm obviously leery of passion for a few reasons, but one of them is that passion is not a plan, it's a feeling, and feelings change. They do. You can be passionate about a person at a job one day and then just not passionate the next. Anyways, I was such a mess when I was in my 20s. Such a mess. I was anxious and depressed and I had no life to speak of. It was tempting to keep my options open, and I was sitting around at night in my underwear watching Seinfeld reruns. Actually, I still do that. That's not the worst thing in the world to do. But I called my mother every single night, crying, and I was turning away perfectly good full-time jobs. And why? Because I was afraid. I was sure I was going to pick the wrong one and get on the wrong train, headed to the wrong future. And my mother begged me to please take a job, any job. You're not going to be stuck. You're stuck now, dear. You don't create a life first and then live it. You create it by living it, not agonizing about it. And so I took a full-time job as an assistant at a management consulting firm where I knew nothing about anything, except that I knew that I had a reason to get up in the morning, get showered, leave the house, and meet the people who were waiting for me at work when I got there. And I got a paycheck every 2 weeks, and that is as good as a reason to take a job as any. Did I know I wanted to be an office administrator for the rest of my life? Was it my passion, my ultimate dream? No, of course not. But this idea that everything you're supposed to do should fit into this passion vertical is unrealistic. I mean, you show me someone who washes windows for a living, and I will bet you $1 million it's not because he has a passion for clean glass. So, when I got a job as a magazine editor and publishing, I was absolutely thrilled. But I had to take a pretty big pay cut, so I had to figure a way to make some more money. So a friend of mine invited me to a jewelry party. And I said, "What's a jewelry party?" And she goes, "Oh, it's like Tupperware, but with bracelets." And I said, "Okay, got it." So I went. And I had the best time. I was there hanging out, trying on jewelry, and the salesperson having a great time. And I'm like, that's a job? I could do that. I mean, she really seems to be having a great time. Now, at this point in my life, you have to understand that I had no passion for jewelry whatsoever. I mean, all my earrings cost what? $20 combined? And then I thought I could fling silver jewelry to suburban moms drinking daiquiris. And so I did it. I signed up. I became a jewelry design. I became a jewelry design rep. And listen to me. I was so awkward and so afraid of selling, but I got better. I started making some money. I started getting really passionate about it. Not just because of the money, but because what I realized is people bought the stuff. Like, they were more than happy to pay for it. And I sold so much jewelry that year, I want a free trip to St. Thomas. But sadly, I had to eventually let my jewelry business go because my career path shifted. But I was so glad that I did that because it planted an entrepreneurial seed I didn't know was there. And still bears fruit to this day. When I was in the 7th grade, I thought something was wrong with me, to be frank, because everyone was into this, like, the rock bands and their members, and they'd carve the names of those bands into the tables at the library, and I would never carve anything just because I couldn't think of anything to carve. I mean, I liked Bon Jovi as much as the next girl, but not enough to deface school property. I really thought something was wrong with me. But that's the fear, isn't it? That when someone asks you at a party, on a date, in a job interview, what are you passionate about? That you're not going to have this wild, compelling answer, and that means that you're not interesting or ambitious, or that you don't have some singular obsession or some scary talent that you've been hiding, and that your life is not worth living, and that's not true. Passion isn't a job, a sport, or a hobby. It's the full force of your attention and energy that you give to whatever is right in front of you. And if you're so busy looking for this passion, you can miss opportunities that change your life. And sometimes you don't know what you're going to do next. I mean, I don't. I love not knowing what I'm going to be doing 5 years from now, or what I'll be into. And that's okay. It's okay not to know. And if you want to write a book, if you want to start a business, if you want to change careers, great. But if you're sitting around waiting for passion to show up and take you there, you're going to be waiting a heck of a long time. So don't wait. Listen to my mother. Spend your time and attention solving your favorite problems. Look for problems that need solving. Be useful. Be generous. People will thank you and hug you and pay you for it, and that's where passion is. Where your energy and effort meet someone else's need. That's when you realize passion lives, and realizing what you have to contribute. So don't wait. Listen to my mother. Just start doing. Because to live a life full of meaning and value, you don't follow your passion. Your passion follows you. Thank you.
Thank you. Your time was 9:43. And I believe that is everyone. So thank you all.
Thank you. Let me ask you this, Connor. Is it time for us to jump off and do the ranking and the comments?
Yes.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yes, and don't forget to, after you like submit them, there's going to be like a confirm box. Don't forget to click that as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you all for performing. You're really good.
Thank you for judging.
Thank you for judging.
Collected
Judging.